The silence of deep space shattered when Riley's console erupted with dozens of overlapping signals. She had been monitoring the empty void between star systems for 3 months without hearing so much as static, and now her equipment screamed with activity. Her hands flew across the controls, trying to separate the chaos into something understandable. "What in the hell is that noise?" Torres asked, rushing to her station. The ship's captain had been reviewing supply reports when the communications array went crazy. Riley's face went pale as she isolated the first signal. "Sir, these are distress calls, lots of them. Different languages, different frequencies, but all asking for help." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They're asking for human help, specifically." The bridge fell silent except for the continuing babble of alien voices crying out across the void. Torres leaned over Riley's shoulder, watching the translation. Software struggle with unknown languages. Fragments appeared on screen. "The metal death comes and harvest ships, strip all life, and most disturbing of all, only the Deathworlders can stop them." "Deathworlders?" Torres muttered. He had never heard the term before, but something cold settled in his stomach. "How many signals are we picking up?" 47 distinct transmissions, sir, all coming from the Epsilon sector." Riley's hands shook as she fine-tuned the receivers. "Sir, some of these voices, they sound like children." Torres activated the ship's general alert. His crew of 38 had signed up for exploration and mineral surveys, not whatever nightmare was broadcasting from the outer rim. But as he listened to the desperate pleas flooding their communications, he knew they couldn't ignore what they were hearing. Dr. Hayes arrived at the bridge within minutes, still wearing his lab coat covered in soil samples from their last planetary survey. The ship's xenobiologist had spent his entire career hoping for first contact, but not like this. He plugged his translation equipment directly into the communications array and began working. "These languages are incredibly complex," Hayes said, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked. "But there are patterns here, common root structures. It's almost like they've been studying human languages and trying to adapt their communications to match our syntax." "That's impossible," Torres replied. "We've never made contact with alien species. How could they know our languages?" Hayes looked up from his equipment, his face grim. "Unless they've been listening to us for years without making contact. Radio signals, television broadcasts, internet transmissions. If they have the technology to monitor us from a distance." A new voice cut through the static, speaking broken but recognizable English. "Human ships, human warriors, please respond. The harvest machines consume our worlds. Our children die. The peaceful races of the galaxy beg you. Only the death world. Predators can fight the metal swarm. Please answer our calls for help." The bridge crew exchanged shocked glances. Riley's equipment showed the signal was coming from a star system 300 light-years away, yet the message was clearly directed at humanity. Torres felt his military training kicking in despite his civilian role. These weren't random distress calls, they were specific requests for human military intervention. "Get me a connection to Fleet Command immediately," Torres ordered. "Emergency priority." While Riley worked to establish communications with Earth, Hayes continued translating the alien messages. A picture emerged that chilled everyone who heard it. An ancient enemy called the Harvesters had awakened and was systematically destroying every inhabited world in the Epsilon sector. Entire civilizations were being consumed by mechanical swarms that stripped planets bare of all biological life. But the most shocking revelation came from the aliens themselves. They had been watching humanity for decades, studying human history, human warfare, and human survival capabilities. To them, Earth wasn't just another inhabited world, it was a death world, a planet so hostile that it produced the galaxy's most dangerous predators. "They're calling us apex predators," Hayes said, his voice barely above a whisper. "According to these transmissions, most inhabited worlds are peaceful garden planets with gentle climates. They can't comprehend how anything could evolve on a world with our weather patterns, our natural disasters, our predator-prey relationships. Torres stared at the star charts showing the Epsilon sector. Dozens of civilizations were crying out for help, specifically requesting aid from a species they simultaneously feared and hoped would save them. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, never realizing that other species were watching them and trying to decide if humans were potential allies or the greatest threat the galaxy had ever seen. The connection to Fleet Command finally established, and Admiral Brooks' weathered face appeared on the main screen. Torres quickly explained the situation, transmitting copies of all the alien communications they had received. Brooke listened in silence, his expression growing more serious with each translation. When Torres finished his report, the Admiral was quiet for long moments. "Captain Torres, you are to proceed immediately toward the source of these transmissions. Do not attempt to make direct contact with any alien vessels, but gather as much intelligence as possible. I'm ordering the Vigilant and the New Horizon to rendezvous with your position within 72 hours. Sir, with respect, we're a survey ship. We don't have military capabilities." "You have human capabilities, Captain. According to these aliens, that might be enough." Brooks' image flickered as the transmission struggled across interstellar distances. "I'm convening an emergency session of the Defense Council. If these transmissions are genuine, we may be facing the biggest decision in human history." As the Terra's Edge changed course toward the Epsilon sector, the alien distress calls continued, flooding their communications. Hayes worked around the clock to translate as many as possible, building a database of alien languages and species names. The picture that emerged showed a galaxy filled with peaceful, technologically advanced civilizations that had never developed significant military capabilities. They had never needed to. Their worlds were safe, their climates stable, their evolution guided by cooperation rather than competition. But that same peaceful evolution had left them defenseless against a threat that viewed biological life as nothing more than raw material to be harvested. Torres stood in his quarters late that night, looking out at the stars and thinking about the impossible situation they were flying toward. Somewhere ahead of them, alien children were dying while their parents begged the galaxy's most feared predators to save them. Humanity had always dreamed of joining a galactic community, but apparently they were being invited not as equals, but as protectors. The distress calls continued through the night, carrying across the void the desperate hope that the Deathworlders would answer their plea for salvation. Admiral Brooks sat in the emergency council chamber, surrounded by the most powerful military leaders on Earth. The room buzzed with tension as xenolinguist Dr. Hayes finished his presentation on the alien transmissions. 3 days had passed since the Terra's Edge first detected the distress calls, and the translations painted a picture that challenged everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said General Martinez, head of the Global Defense Force. "These alien species have been secretly monitoring our planet for decades, studying our cultures and languages, and they consider us to be the most dangerous predators in the galaxy?" Hayes nodded grimly. "The evidence is overwhelming. I've identified linguistic patterns that could only come from decades of exposure to human communication. They know our military history, our technological development, even our entertainment media. One transmission specifically referenced scenes from our war movies as examples of human tactical thinking." President Chen leaned forward, her face reflecting the weight of the decision before them. "What exactly are these harvesters that have them so terrified?" Intelligence Director Webb activated the holographic display, showing the data they had gathered from alien transmissions. "Based on the descriptions we've translated, the harvesters appear to be an ancient automated military system. They emerge from dormancy every few thousand years to consume all biological life in this galaxy sector, then return to hibernation until the next cycle. The hologram showed artistic representations based on alien descriptions, massive geometric constructs that moved between star systems, stripping planets of all organic matter and leaving behind sterile metal worlds. The scale was beyond anything humanity had ever conceived of. The aliens describe previous harvester cycles from their historical records, Webb continued. Each time, civilizations band together to fight them. Each time, the harvesters adapt to whatever defensive strategies are used against them. The machines learn, evolve, and become more efficient at their task of biological extermination. Dr. Hayes pulled up another section of translations. But here's what's truly remarkable. The aliens have calculated that Earth is the only death world in this region of the galaxy. Every other inhabited planet developed life under stable, peaceful conditions. They can't understand how any species could survive on a world with our weather patterns, tectonic activity, and predator-prey ecosystems. Admiral Brooke studied the alien assessments of human military capabilities. The translations were disturbing in their accuracy. The aliens had witnessed human conflicts through intercepted communications and determined that humanity employed tactical thinking unlike any other species in the galaxy. They describe human warfare as chaotic adaptive violence, Brooke read from the reports. They've observed that humans use improvised weapons, sacrifice individuals for group survival, and employ tactics that prioritize victory over preservation of resources or infrastructure. General Williams, head of the Space Force, shook his head in amazement. They've been watching us fight each other for decades and concluded that we're the galaxy's apex predators. No wonder they stayed hidden. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Terra's edge. Torres appeared on the main screen, his face haggard from days without sleep. Admiral, we've reached the edge of the conflict zone. Sir, you need to see this. The image switched to the ship's forward cameras, showing a sight that left the Council speechless. An entire star system had been stripped bare. Planets that should have been blue-green with life were now gray metal spheres, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns. Debris fields marked where space stations and orbital habitats had once existed. We've detected massive energy signatures moving toward the next inhabited system, Torres reported. The harvesters aren't stopping. According to the alien transmissions we're monitoring, they've already consumed 17 civilizations in the past 6 months. Dr. Hayes translated a new message that had just arrived, a transmission from a species called the Milani, whose homeworld was directly in the path of the advancing harvester fleet. The message was brief and heartbreaking. Our children ask why the sky machines have come for us. We tell them the Deathworlders will save us. Please do not let our faith in your strength be misplaced. The council chamber fell silent. President Chen finally spoke, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the decision before them. Admiral Brooke, in your professional military opinion, do we have any chance of success against an enemy that has defeated every other species in the galaxy? Brooke considered the question carefully. Madam President, every military engagement I've studied shows that the harvesters adapt to conventional tactical thinking. They learn from each encounter and develop countermeasures. But human military history is built on unconventional thinking. We excel at asymmetric warfare, improvised solutions and tactics that prioritize mission success over preservation of equipment or even personnel. General Martinez nodded in agreement. Our entire military doctrine is based on adapting to hostile environments and superior enemy forces. It's what we've had to do throughout human history just to survive on our own planet. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some council members argued for caution, suggesting that humanity should use their advanced warning to prepare Earth's defenses rather than risk their entire species on a rescue mission. Others pointed out that if the harvesters succeeded in consuming all other biological life in the galaxy, Earth would eventually face them alone. The turning point came when Dr. Hayes translated a final transmission, a child's voice speaking, in broken English, clearly learned from monitoring human broadcasts. "Hello, Earth people. My name is hard for you to say. The bad machines are coming to eat my world. My parent says you are very scary and very strong. Please save us. I promise we will be good friends after." President Chen stood up slowly, looking around the room at the assembled military leaders. "Gentlemen, ladies, we came together today to decide whether humanity should risk everything to save species we've never met, people whose names we can't even pronounce. But I think the real question is, what kind of species do we want to be? Do we want to be the kind that hides while children across the galaxy call out for help?" The vote was unanimous. Admiral Brooke was given full authority to mobilize every available military asset. Humanity was going to war against an enemy that had never been defeated, to save civilizations that had feared them from a distance, based on the desperate hope that being apex predators from a death world might be exactly what the galaxy needed. As the Council dispersed to begin the largest military mobilization in human history, Dr. Hayes remained behind, still working on translations. More alien species were sending messages now, word spreading through hidden communication networks that the Deathworlders had heard their pleas and were preparing to respond. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if the species that had terrified them from afar would prove to be their salvation. The transformation began within hours of the Council's decision. Across the solar system, civilian facilities converted to military production at a pace that amazed even the coordinators. Commander Stone watched from the observation deck of Luna, stationed as mining platforms retrofitted with weapon systems while cargo haulers received armor plating and missile pods. "Sir, the corporate fleets are responding faster than we anticipated," reported Lieutenant Foster, reviewing the mobilization reports. "Asteroid Mining Corporation has volunteered their entire deep space fleet. The cargo haulers are already being fitted with military-grade targeting systems." Stone nodded, studying the organized chaos unfolding around Luna's shipyards. The human response was unlike anything the galaxy had probably ever seen, where other species apparently built dedicated warships over years or decades. Humans were weaponizing everything that could fly. Industrial fabricators churned out ammunition, while mining lasers were recalibrated as ship-killing weapons. The response came from every corner of human space. The Mars Colonial Defense Force offered their experienced atmospheric fighters. The Europa Mining Consortium provided their ice-cutting equipment, which engineers quickly realized could slice through ship hulls. Even the asteroid belt pirates sent representatives, offering their knowledge of hit-and-run tactics in exchange for amnesty and a chance to fight alongside humanity's official forces. President Rodriguez called it the most impressive mobilization in human history, but Stone knew it was more than that. It was humanity revealing its true nature to the galaxy. Every faction that had ever fought each other was now working together, united by the knowledge that alien children were dying while begging for human intervention. The flagship of the hastily assembled armada was the Earth's Fury, a massive battleship constructed around the skeleton of a defunct mining platform. Its weapon systems were a mixture of military hardware and improvised industrial equipment. The ship's main gun was originally designed to crack asteroids, now modified to fire projectiles at relativistic speeds. Captain Morgan stood on the bridge of the Earth's Fury, watching the final preparations. His crew was equally mixed. Career military officers working alongside civilian engineers and former pirates who knew more about space combat than anyone wanted to admit. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did. "Status report from all fleet divisions," Morgan announced. Commander Bell, coordinating the military vessels, replied first. "Regular fleet units are fully operational. We have 43 dedicated warships, including carriers, destroyers, and support vessels, all armed with conventional military hardware." Lieutenant Park, representing the civilian conversions, gave her report. Converted civilian fleet stands at 112 vessels, mining ships, cargo haulers, research vessels, and exploration craft, all retrofitted with whatever weapon systems we could mount in the available time. The numbers were staggering, but the real strength of the human response wasn't in the ships themselves. It was in the people crewing them. Miners who had learned to survive in the hostile environment of space. Engineers who specialized in jury-rigging solutions when proper equipment wasn't available. Military personnel trained in asymmetric warfare and adapting to superior enemy forces. Dr. Hayes, now serving as the fleet's alien communications specialist, briefed the command staff on the latest intelligence. We're receiving more detailed information about harvester tactics from the surviving alien species. The pattern is always the same. They analyze defensive strategies, adapt their approach, and systematically overwhelm organized resistance. Morgan studied the tactical data. Every previous engagement showed the same result. Alien fleets using coordinated, logical military strategies that the harvesters learned to counter perfectly. The machines analyzed formation patterns, weapon frequencies, and tactical doctrines, then developed specific countermeasures. "The aliens fight like us," Commander Bell observed. "Organized formations, coordinated attacks, standardized equipment, everything by the book." "But we don't fight by the book," Morgan replied with a grim smile. "We fight like humans." The human fleet that assembled was a testament to organized chaos. No two ships were alike. Weapons systems ranged from cutting-edge military hardware to improvised mining equipment. Crews included everyone from elite special forces operators to civilian volunteers who had never fired a shot in anger. Lieutenant Foster coordinated with the various faction leaders as they integrated into the overall command structure. The Mars. Colonists brought experience fighting in hostile environments. The Belt miners understood zero-gravity combat better than anyone. The corporate security forces provided disciplined firepower, while the reformed pirates offered unconventional tactics. "The alien observers must be terrified," Dr. Hayes commented as he watched the fleet formations. "They asked for apex predators and we're showing them exactly what that means." The mobilization revealed something that even humans hadn't fully understood about themselves. Their fractious nature, their tendency to fight among themselves, their ability to weaponize civilian technology. All of it was the product of evolving on a death world where survival required constant adaptation and aggressive problem-solving. As the fleet prepared to depart, more alien transmissions arrived. Species that had remained silent were now broadcasting their locations and requesting human protection. Word was spreading through the galaxy that the Deathworlders had actually responded to the distress calls. "We're receiving a transmission from a species called the Cathani," Dr. Hayes announced. "They're offering to serve as guides and provide intelligence about harvester movements. They want to meet with our fleet at the edge of the conflict zone." Morgan approved the rendezvous. The idea of actual face-to-face contact with alien species was still surreal, but the urgency of the situation left no time for extended diplomatic protocols. They were racing against time as the harvesters continued their systematic extermination of biological life. The departure ceremony was broadcast across human space. Children who had grown up dreaming of meeting aliens watched as humanity's greatest fleet launched not for exploration or conquest, but to answer desperate pleas for help from species they had never seen. As the Earth's fury led the Armada out of the solar system, Morgan reflected on the impossible nature of their mission. They were heading into battle against an enemy that had never been defeated, using tactics that had never been tried, to save civilizations that had watched them from the shadows for decades. But they were human. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, developed technologies through warfare and competition, and learned to turn desperation into tactical advantage. If anyone in the galaxy could find a way to defeat the harvesters, it would be the species that had never learned to give up. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying with it the hopes of countless alien civilizations and the full fury of humanity's death world heritage. Behind them, Earth continued its mobilization, preparing additional fleets in case the first wave failed. But failure wasn't really an option. Somewhere ahead of them, alien children were waiting for rescue, trusting that the scary predators from the Death World would keep their promise to help. The human armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Epsilon sector and immediately faced a scene of devastation that challenged their worst expectations. Space around them glittered with debris fields that had once been orbital stations and defensive platforms. The nearest star system showed the telltale geometric patterns of harvester consumption, its planets stripped bare of all biological matter. Captain Morgan studied the tactical displays from the bridge of the Earth's Fury, while his communications officer worked to establish contact with any surviving alien forces. The scale of destruction was beyond anything in human military history. Entire civilizations had been systematically erased, their worlds converted to sterile metal spheres. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures moving through the next system over," reported Lieutenant Davis from the sensor station. "The readings match the harvester descriptions we received from the alien transmissions." Before Morgan could respond, a new contact appeared on the edge of sensor range. A small, damaged vessel broadcasting what Dr. Hayes quickly identified as a peaceful greeting in multiple alien languages. The ship was clearly not human in design, its organic curves and flowing lines completely unlike the angular efficiency of human engineering. "This is it," Dr. Hayes said quietly. "First contact with an alien species." The alien vessel approached slowly, broadcasting continuously on multiple frequencies. Dr. Hayes worked frantically to translate the messages, his equipment struggling with the complex linguistic patterns. "They're identifying themselves as Cathani, survivors," Hayes announced. "The ship is called something like Peaceful Dawn, and they're requesting permission to communicate with the human fleet commanders." Morgan authorized the contact, and within minutes the main screen flickered to life, showing humanity's first glimpse of an alien being. The creature appeared vaguely humanoid, but with features that were unmistakably non-human. Large eyes adapted for low light, skin with a slight blue tint, and expressions that conveyed intelligence and desperate hope. "I am Commander Oren of the Cathani Defense Fleet," the alien said in heavily accented but understandable English. "We have waited so long for the Deathworlders to answer our calls. Our scientists calculated you were our only hope, but we feared you might see our pleas as weakness." Morgan stepped forward, acutely aware that his next words would represent all of humanity. "Commander Oren, we received your distress signals. We're here to help. What can you tell us about the Harvester forces?" Oren's relief was visible even across species lines. "The main Harvester fleet is currently consuming the Talani homeworld 3 systems from here. They move in formations of geometric precision, their ships rebuilding themselves from consumed matter. Every tactic we have tried, they adapt to and counter." The alien commander transmitted tactical data that human analysts had been waiting for. The Harvesters operated with perfect coordination, each ship connected to a central command network that allowed them to share information instantly. When one unit learned to counter a specific attack, all units immediately gained that knowledge. "Every species in the galaxy fights the same way," Oren explained. "Organized formations, standardized tactics, coordinated strategies. The Harvesters have encountered these patterns thousands of times over millions of years. They know exactly how to defeat organized military resistance." Commander Bell studied the alien tactical records, comparing them to human military doctrine. The pattern was clear. Every species that had faced the Harvesters had used conventional military strategies. Logical, efficient, predictable approaches that the ancient machines had learned to counter perfectly. "Commander Oren," Morgan said, "how do human military strategies compare to the approaches used by other species?" The alien's expression showed what humans would interpret as bewilderment mixed with fear. "Human warfare is unlike anything in galactic history. You employ chaos as a tactical weapon. You sacrifice equipment and personnel for strategic advantage. Your species uses improvised solutions and unpredictable combinations of technology. Dr. Hayes translated additional comments from other aliens monitoring the conversation. The species that had been watching humanity for decades had concluded that human military thinking was fundamentally different from all other galactic civilizations. Where others sought to preserve and protect, humans were willing to destroy everything if necessary to achieve victory. The conversation was interrupted by urgent sensor readings. The Harvester fleet was moving faster than expected, heading directly toward a star system where millions of alien refugees had gathered for evacuation. The human fleet would have to intercept them before they reached the civilian population. "All ships, prepare for combat," Morgan announced across the fleet communication system. "We're about to test whether being apex predators from a death world gives us any advantage against an enemy that's never been defeated." The human armada moved toward the interception point using formations that horrified their alien observers. Instead of organized battle lines, the human ships spread out in seemingly random patterns. Mining vessels moved alongside military destroyers. Cargo haulers, bristling with improvised weapons, stayed close to elite fighter squadrons. When the Harvester fleet came into visual range, the human crews got their first look at the enemy that had terrorized the galaxy. The machines were massive geometric constructs that moved with perfect precision, their surfaces constantly shifting as they rebuilt themselves from consumed matter. They radiated an alien intelligence that was utterly hostile to biological life. The Harvesters immediately began analyzing the human fleet, their sensors probing ship configurations and weapon systems. But the data they collected didn't match any known patterns. Every human vessel was unique, armed with different combinations of military and civilian technology. Major Thompson led the first attack wave, coordinating mining ships armed with asteroid cracking. Charges alongside military fighters carrying conventional missiles. The combination should never have worked, but the Harvesters couldn't predict which ships would attack with what weapons. "All units, execute random engagement protocols," Thompson announced. "No coordinated patterns, no standard formations. Fight like humans." The battle that followed violated every principle of organized warfare. Human ships attacked individually or in improvised groups, using whatever weapons they had available. Mining lasers sliced through Harvester hulls, while improvised missile pods launched everything from military ordnances to explosive mining charges. The Harvesters began to falter. Their adaptive systems were designed to counter logical tactical thinking, but they couldn't predict the actions of crews who were making tactical decisions based on desperation and improvised solutions. Sergeant Wilson led a boarding party onto a damaged Harvester construct using maintenance tools as weapons and explosive charges meant for asteroid mining to destroy critical systems. The ancient machines had never encountered enemies who would board their vessels and fight hand-to-hand in zero gravity using improvised equipment. Engineering teams reprogrammed civilian fabricators to produce ammunition during combat, turning cargo bays into weapons factories. The Harvesters watched in confusion as human ships continued fighting even after exhausting their original armaments. The tide turned when Captain Lewis realized that the Harvesters' greatest strength, their perfect coordination, was also a vulnerability. If they shared information instantly, then false information would spread just as quickly. "All ships with electronic warfare capabilities begin broadcasting false sensor readings," Lewis ordered. "Make them think we have twice as many ships as we actually do." The deception worked. The Harvesters began responding to threats that didn't exist, dividing their attention and weakening their coordinated assault. Human ships exploited the confusion, using the machine's own efficiency against them. As the first Harvester fleet retreated, the human crews were stunned by their victory. They had done something no other species in galactic history had accomplished. They had defeated the ancient enemy using tactics so chaotic and unpredictable that the machines couldn't adapt fast enough to counter them. But the celebration was short-lived. Long-range sensors detected dozens of additional Harvester fleets converging on their position. The real war was just beginning, and humanity had revealed their capabilities to an enemy that was already learning from the encounter. 3 weeks after their first victory against the Harvesters, the human fleet found themselves defending the last major refugee concentration in the Epsilon sector. Millions of aliens from dozens of species had gathered around the gas giant terminus. 7, using its moons as evacuation staging areas while hoping the Deathworlders could somehow stop the advancing mechanical swarms. Admiral Brooke arrived with the second wave of human reinforcements, bringing the total fleet strength to over 400 vessels. But even with their enhanced numbers, the tactical situation looked impossible. Long-range sensors showed 13 separate Harvester fleets converging on their position, each one larger than the force they had barely defeated in their first engagement. "The Harvesters have adapted to our previous tactics," reported Commander Stone from the Intelligence Division. "They're maintaining greater distances between their units, preventing our boarding actions. They've also developed countermeasures for our electronic warfare deceptions." Captain Morgan studied the tactical displays showing the approaching enemy forces. The ancient machines had done exactly what every previous species had warned about. They had learned from the encounter and developed specific countermeasures for human tactics. But Dr. Hayes had been working with alien scientists to understand something more fundamental about the Harvester's nature. "The machines operate under very specific programming constraints," he explained to the command staff. "They're designed to preserve and catalog biological specimens while they consume worlds. They want to understand what they're destroying before they destroy it." Admiral Brooke nodded grimly. "And that gives us an advantage they've never faced before. Every other species in the galaxy tries to preserve themselves and their civilizations. But humans from a death world understand that sometimes survival requires accepting total destruction. The strategy that emerged from the human command. Discussions would have horrified any other species in the galaxy. They called it the Death World Doctrine, a military philosophy that embraced mutually assured destruction as an acceptable tactical option. Colonel Reed coordinated with the alien evacuation efforts, while human engineers prepared their most desperate gambit yet. They were going to use the gas giant itself as a weapon, destabilizing its atmospheric layers to create a system-wide catastrophe that would destroy everything in the area, including the human fleet if necessary. "The alien refugees are asking if we're certain about this approach," Dr. Hayes translated from the evacuation coordinators. "They can't understand why we would risk destroying ourselves to stop the Harvesters." "Because that's what Death World predators do," Brooke replied simply. "We evolved on a planet that taught us that sometimes the only way to win is to make sure everyone loses." The final battle began when the lead Harvester fleets entered the Terminus 7 system. The machines moved with perfect coordination, having adapted their formations to counter every tactic the humans had previously used. They maintained distance to prevent boarding actions, used redundant communication systems to prevent electronic warfare, and approached with overwhelming numerical superiority. Captain Martinez led the defensive formations, but this time, the human ships weren't trying to win a conventional engagement. They were buying time for the engineering teams working frantically around the gas giant's upper atmosphere. "All ships, implement harassment protocols only," Martinez announced. "Our job is to keep them focused on us while the real work happens behind us." Human vessels darted in and out of the Harvester formations, using hit-and-run tactics that prevented the machines from concentrating their fire. Mining ships used their industrial equipment to destabilize asteroids, hurling them at enemy formations. Civilian cargo haulers dumped their contents, everything from construction materials to food supplies, creating debris fields that disrupted Harvester movement patterns. The aliens watching the battle couldn't understand what they were seeing. The humans were fighting like they had already accepted defeat, using their ships as disposable weapons rather than trying to preserve their fleet. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Palmer realized that the Harvester's adaptive programming had a critical flaw. The machines were designed to preserve biological specimens, but they couldn't compute tactical scenarios where biological species actively sought to destroy themselves rather than be consumed. They can't adapt to suicidal tactics because their core programming won't allow them to accept that biological life would choose extinction over preservation, Palmer explained over the battle communications. Human ships began implementing truly desperate tactics. Captain Rodriguez piloted his damaged destroyer directly into a Harvester command ship, detonating his reactor at the moment of impact. The explosion took out both vessels, but the psychological impact on the Harvester fleet was unprecedented. The machines had never encountered enemies who treated their own extinction as an acceptable cost of victory. Their programming couldn't process tactical decisions that prioritize destruction over survival. Major Williams led a squadron of fighters directly into the heart of the largest Harvester formation, each pilot prepared to detonate their ship's power systems rather than allow capture or retreat. The machines retreated from the attack, their sensors unable to predict the actions of enemies who had embraced their own destruction as a tactical weapon. The climax came when the engineering teams completed their work around the gas giant. They had destabilized the planet's atmospheric layers, creating a cascading reaction that would destroy everything within the star system. The evacuation ships carrying alien refugees were already jumping to faster-than-light travel, fleeing the imminent catastrophe. All Harvester fleets. This is Admiral Brooke of the human fleet. Brooke broadcast on all frequencies. You have encountered something your programming has never computed before. We are biological life that chooses extinction over consumption. Withdraw now or be destroyed along with us. The Harvester response was immediate and unprecedented. For the first time in galactic history, the ancient machines began retreating from a system they were in the process of consuming. Their adaptive programming could counter every known military strategy, but they couldn't compute victory scenarios against enemies who embraced mutually assured destruction. As the human fleet evacuated just ahead of the gas giant's collapse, they received transmissions from across the galaxy. The Harvester retreat had been observed by hidden alien monitoring stations throughout the sector. Word spread instantly. The Deathworlders had done the impossible. They had made the ancient enemy retreat. The aftermath reshaped galactic civilization overnight. Species that had hidden from humanity for decades emerged from concealment, openly requesting alliance and protection. The aliens who had once feared human predatory instincts now celebrated them as the galaxy's salvation. Ambassador King established the Galactic Defense Compact from the bridge of the Earth's fury, with representatives from 47 alien species participating in the first interspecies diplomatic summit in galactic history. The formal ceremonies were broadcast across hundreds of worlds, marking humanity's transition from hidden observers to active protectors of galactic civilization. The treaty established human military bases throughout the galaxy, with Earth's forces serving as the primary defense against future Harvester incursions. Alien species provided technological assistance, resource support, and intelligence networks in exchange for human protection. But the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed biological warfare itself. The human demonstration that extinction could be used as a tactical weapon had fundamentally altered the strategic balance of power. The Harvesters, for all their ancient intelligence, could not adapt to enemies who valued victory over survival. Dr. Hayes worked with alien scientists to establish communication protocols and cultural exchange programs. The species that had watched humanity from the shadows were eager to understand the Death World mentality that had saved them all. Universities across the galaxy began studying human military history, trying to comprehend how evolution on a hostile planet had produced tactical thinking unlike anything in galactic civilization. The transformation wasn't limited to military matters. Human engineering approaches revolutionized alien technology development. Where other species designed elegant, efficient systems, humans created robust, adaptable equipment that could function under extreme conditions. Human improvisation techniques became standard curriculum in alien technical schools. The refugee populations that had fled the Harvester advance began returning to their reclaimed worlds, but now under human protection. Earth's colonies spread throughout the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians, establishing outposts designed to detect and respond to future threats. Commander Orin, the Cathani officer who had made first contact with the human fleet, served as the primary liaison between the Galactic Defense Compact and the various alien governments. His reports to the Compact Council regularly marveled at human approaches to problems that other species considered unsolvable. The Deathworlders see obstacles as opportunities, Orin reported during one session. Where we see insurmountable challenges, they see tactical advantages waiting to be exploited. Their entire mindset is shaped by evolving under conditions that would destroy any other known species. The final confrontation with the Harvesters came not through military action, but through strategic psychology. The ancient machines, faced with an enemy that could not be defeated through conventional means, began a systematic withdrawal from the galaxy. Their programming could not compute successful scenarios against biological life that embraced extinction as readily as victory. Long-range monitoring stations detected the Harvester fleets moving toward the galactic edge, apparently returning to whatever dormancy they had emerged from. But this time, they carried with them data about a species that had violated every assumption in their ancient programming. As the immediate crisis ended, humanity faced a new challenge, living up to the reputation that had saved the galaxy. The aliens who had once feared human predatory instincts now depended on them for survival. Earth became the center of galactic defense planning, with human military academies training officers from dozens of species in Deathworld tactics. The story concluded with a scene that captured the transformation of human-alien relations. A group of alien children visited Earth as part of a cultural exchange program, playing in the parks of New Geneva while their parents discussed defense treaties with human officials. One young alien approached Ambassador King during the ceremony, speaking in carefully practiced English. "Thank you for saving us from the metal monsters. My parents says you are very scary fighters, but you are also very good friends." King knelt down to the child's level, smiling as he replied, "We learned to be scary fighters because our world taught us that sometimes scary is what you need to be to protect the people you care about." The galaxy had learned that the species they once feared as apex predators were in fact exactly what they needed. Guardians who understood that sometimes the greatest act of protection required the willingness to sacrifice everything. Human ships now patrolled the space lanes between worlds, their crews ready to respond to any threat with the same desperate determination that had driven the Harvesters into retreat. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's shepherds, ensuring that biological life would never again face extinction alone. And in the deep space monitoring stations at the galaxy's edge, human sensors watched for any sign of the Harvesters' return, ready to remind the ancient machines that Earth's children had inherited more than just a hostile planet. They had inherited the will to fight for others, no matter the cost.